listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Let's get a mic check on there. All right. Wow, we got 3 people actually listening to begin a stream. This is like a new record for us. All right. Let's get everything situated. Lighting looks good. Nice. So how's everybody doing this morning? Wait for a couple more people to show up. Get some questions going. Where's the comment section? There it is. Sweet. So, how are we sounding? Can everyone hear me okay? Mic check. Mic check. Perfect. Okay, sweet. Sorry about the delay, everybody. Oop, that's a little bit too loud. Sorry about the delay, everybody. Had a camera issue this morning that popped up on me, so that is completely on me. Still new to this whole shtick of doing the live stream, which is a lot of fun, by the way. So we got a good show planned. We're gonna have a couple of guests. We are going to be talking about how to use Google Earth. We're going to talk about the Bassmaster tournament that just happened on the Harris chain. We also got some prep for the Classic, and we're going to talk about springtime fishing, and I'm going to answer any and all questions that you guys have. So we're going to let a couple more people fill into the queue, and then if there's a specific lake on Google Earth that you guys want me to talk about or to show, kind of let me know. And first come, first serve. First person to drop a comment of a lake that you want me to specifically show on Google Earth will be one of the first ones that we do when we go to that section of the live stream. Bring in our first guest here shortly. Yes, and we got 5 in the queue right now. And then so our first guest, if we can get him on this morning for today's show, will be Jared Mounts of Jake's Bait and Tackle. Just kind of talking about a state of the union, about fun things that are going to be happening for fishing the DMV and also for Jake's Bait and Tackle in the upcoming weeks. And let me know in the comment section, are any of you guys going out fishing this weekend? Are any of you guys going outdoors? Are you like me? You're just counting down the days until the time change and we can actually start getting a little bit warmer weather. We can actually get out and enjoy ourselves again, because I am getting cabin fever. I wasn't actually going to go fishing tomorrow, but I had some work that actually came up that I have to take care of. Let me see if I get my first guest in here. But Buddy Gross on the Harris Chain of Lakes, that was a freaking awesome win that he had. And we talked a little bit about kind of like some of the presentations he used in our last live stream. Hey, Travis, went out last Saturday during the windstorm. Went out last Saturday during the windstorm. Safe to say it was a waste. Dude, is it ever really a waste to be out on the water, though? Be real. Is it ever really a waste to be out on the water? Alrighty, get that set up there. And we're going to, while we're waiting for our first guest, I think we're going to kind of get started with some conversational pieces. Let me just get my notes up here. The dreaded dead time. Perfect. And we are good to go. Perfection. Excellent. All right, sweet. All right, so while we're waiting for our first guest to get on, I want you guys, and this is going to be, all right, some housekeeping stuff before we get started here. Sorry about that. All right, so housekeeping order. We got a new podcast coming out this Tuesday. It's a really cool one. Not gonna a little bit of a spoiler. We're gonna be talking about Lake Frederick, actually in Front Royal, Virginia. So that's gonna be a lot of fun. We also are gonna have some coverage of the Bassmaster Classic that's going to be happening this coming week. So that's going to be really cool too. If you guys didn't know that the Bassmaster Classic starts next weekend, first day is Friday, March 4th, I believe. Yep, March 4th through the 6th. We're going to be having some coverage of that and a live meet and greet at Jake's Bait and Tackle. More information about that to come, and that'll be linked in the episode description down below. So to kind of get started, we're going to start with using Google Earth. This was a topic from last live stream that we started to hit on the very end, and we decided to wait until this one since it was like 10 o'clock at night. So we're going to get started with that. Travis, do you have a specific lake in mind, sir, that you would like me to cover? Or anybody watching? Before I just start picking one, you got 30 seconds to type it out, Travis. Give me a lake, buddy. Ooh, Lake Moomaw? Okay. So there's our first one there. So Travis wants us to do a lake breakdown about Lake Moomaw. So we're going to help that man out, and we're going to do that for him right now. So I don't know how many of you guys know about Google Earth. I think it's split 50-50 based on the information that I've heard about using Google Earth and Navionics to help you kind of get set before you even fish. And there's a lot of really cool features. And there's even more features if you get the Google Earth Pro edition and you put that on your desktop. There are some really good videos out there about that. What I'm going to do is today just talk about basic Google Earth that you can just get online. And then we'll do a separate video where we go into Google Earth Pro edition. It has some neat features such as you can get different images from different points in time. So example is if you want to do like Moomaw, for example, you can use Google Earth Pro and you can get images from that like over a couple of years. So you can see drawdown, you can see the effects of weather on the shoreline. It's a really a couple of neat features, but we're going to do a separate one on that later. Yeah, let's switch that right over there. So that, perfect. Sweet. So let us kind of get into it. But Lake Moomaw is a great one. And let me get that shared up here. All right. And then, yeah, let me know in the comment section below, guys, if there's a specific lake that you would like me to work on, you want to let me to do a breakdown on, anything like that. But we'll get started here. I'm still exhausted. So what are you going to do? As I kind of get all the way and I scroll down to good old Lake Moomaw. There we go. It's always good when you can't find it. There we go. All right, Lake Moomaw. Sorry about that. All right, so Google Earth, you guys can get it on your phone. You guys can get it on your phone. You guys can get it on your computer, tablet, anything like that. Just download the free version to begin with. You guys want to follow along. And I'm going to give you guys about 5 seconds. Just kidding. I'm going to give you about like a minute. Try to get this up on your phone. I want you guys to kind of follow along with me and what I'm doing here. And this is how, when I was fishing in college tournaments, high school tournaments, anything like that, this is kind of how you can get yourself set up before you even get to the lake and have a generic idea of where to go and where to actually start your fishing process. And so there's 2 softwares that you can use that are free that work extremely well. First is, of course, Google Earth, the regular edition. And then you can also use Navionics. And so what we're going to do here is I'm going to bring them both up at the same time. Boom, just like that. And we don't even have to see my face. That'll make it a little bit easier there. Sweet. So perfect. So first thing you want to do with Google, what's neat about Google Earth is, besides giving you kind of an idea of the topography, which is absolutely crucial, it can also tell a little bit more about the shoreline too, whether you have a lot of docks, whether you have a lot of laydowns, things of that ilk. And then so if I was going to just be put in here straightforward, just dump me in. I have to fish a tournament next weekend on this lake. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down here with this kind of spread that I have right up on my screen. I have Navionics and I have Google Earth. And what I'm going to do first is I'm not going to worry about Navionics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the screen size just a little bit there. And I'm going to kind of scroll down here. And all I'm just going to do is I'm going to look for spawning coves, places that I think are going to hold the greatest population of fish when it's that time for them to come up. And for Lake Moomal, it's pretty freaking easy, because as you can tell, there's not a whole lot of spawning bays, like an example of like a Smith Mountain Lake. Smith Mountain Lake has 1 billion fingers on it. And so that's a place where you can easily get lost going from spawning bay to spawning bay. So what we're going to do is, if you can see the lower portion where the Jackson River fish is in here, this right in here is kind of giving us what we want. We've got these pockets right here. Boom. So now, just for this experimentation here, let's just say after studying these maps for a while, I got these creeks right here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get in as deep as I can, or as tight to these images as I can. And I want to kind of look around kind of the bank a little bit, just to see what kind I'm dealing with. And again, I'm going based off of, I've never been to this lake before. First time, and I'm looking at it. And you know what I notice? This lake has a drawdown period. Look at this. See this bank here? It's barren, a lot of laydowns, but definitely it's in a winter draw possibly, which is important, because what you can do is screenshot this, get waypoints, and then when you go there, you can compare it to the images and be like, okay, the water's up a little bit, the water's down a little bit. And again, this is with the regular edition. Our next time we talk about Google Earth, we'll talk about the Google Earth Pro edition that has a bunch of different features as well. So anyway, I'm just going to be looking around these pockets real quick, just with this first before I get into depth. Okay, and the Navionics chart. This is crucially important for me to get a vibe about the cover and the terrain that I'll be dealing with when I get there. And so you can see there's a bunch of laydowns. It's definitely drawing down a little bit. And the other thing I'm noticing, guys, and let me know in the comment section if anything sticks out to you in particular. Not a lot of docks on Lake Moomal, at least in this section. Okay, this is important because Navionics, or depending on the mapping software you have, and depending on the lake, may or may not show that. So, okay, this is cool. Now, what I would do is I would have another notepad, a Word doc, and I would write down little things that I notice. So for the ones that are just joining the chat, if you put a comment in there about a specific lake, we'll talk about that, about how to break it down using Google Earth and Navionics maps. So just type it in, the lake, and we'll try to get to it today. We're on Lake Moomal. So first thing I'm going to do, I have a notepad here. I'm writing it down. The lake looks like it's drawn down a little bit. Not a lot of pockets on this lake. If you look back up here for our new members, there's not a lot of creeks and fingers and coves on Lake Moomal. So that's important, because we are entering the pre-spawn and the spawn. So right now I got these 3 right here. So boom, I just wrote down these notes. Now, what the other thing I'm looking at is the cover. Looking around, I don't see a lot of docks on this lake. Okay, that's important. I'm going to write that down in my notes. Then I'm going to look at it like, what cover is available? Well, it looks like we got a bunch of laydowns. We do have different type of timber in the water, and it looks like we have different types of chunk rock. Cool. I'm going to write that down. And this is important also when we're talking about the species. What's in Lake Moomal? Smallmouth and largemouth. And Travis right there. Yeah, I think there may be like 3 docks on Moomal. Yeah, and I've never been to Lake Moomal before. I actually have never been there. So this is the first time for me really breaking down a map this place as well. So anyway, as you're looking at this place, we're making our notes. Hopefully you guys are following along at home. We're using Google Earth Regular and Navionics Desktop. You guys can use that. as well. And we're making notes of everything we have so far. So now we know there's chunk rock. We know the lake is drawn down a little bit. There is timber and there's very little docks. Now we also need to add into this, and we'll write this on our little noteboard, what type of bass is primarily in this lake? Is it largemouth, smallmouth, or spots? And that's important because it really will help you mentally dictate how to plan the attack. So example is, let's say this was a spotted bass lake, like Lake Lanier. I'm going to approach that with the pre-spawn and spawn a little bit differently than I would for Florida strain largemouth, because it affects the topography in which they're going to spawn in is a little bit different. Their depth is a little bit different. Water clarity is a little bit different for perfect conditions, of course. Now what we're going to do with this information here, we're going to go to feature number 2 with this thing. And again, guys, this is just a basic Google Earth and everything you need to do to kind of get started. It can go completely down the rabbit hole with this, and we will do that eventually. But anyway, so then what you're going to do is you're going to hit this button here called 3D. Very, very important. Boom. So just in case you guys don't know what I did here, there's this little button down here on the regular Google Earth. It's called 3D mode. This here is a game changer. It's a simple thing, part of this free app. Once you've done the homework that we already talked about, which is what? Identify the lake. Write down notes of things that stick out to you. What's the primary cover? Does the lake draw down? What time of year is it? Once you do all of that, once you get all that written down, what you're going to do, and I'll do it one more time for you, you're going to come down here to the 3D button right here, and you're going to hit that. And I don't know why my map scooted around like that. I'm sorry. Boom. See how I hit that? So by hitting that 3D button, all of a sudden, the topography of this place absolutely popped. And that to me, it is so crucial and important to be able to do that, to have it pop like that, because it's going to help you understand the break lines, the points, and the steepness without ever even looking at navionics. So now let's go right back here to these creek edges. Just like that. Perfection. Sweet. Perfect. And so now looking at these things right here, oh my goodness, there's all of a sudden, it's really steep. These places are insanely steep. What does steepness mean? It means it's going to have a deeper break line. The water is not going to be, it's going to be more prominent, the change from deep to shallow. And this is all done with just using the 3D effect. Does that make sense? Now I can look at these banks and understand which ones are steeper, which ones are flatter, and it's going to give me a better idea of that compared to any navionics chip out there. So now what we're going to do, now that we did that, we identified that. Let me flip some stuff around there. Oops, sorry. Clean that up. Perfection. Perfect. So now what we're going to do, we wrote that in our notes. This lake is very mountainous. And I know these notes seem really stupid and really simple, but dude, you're building a case, almost like you're an investigator at a murder scene. And you're writing all these notes down so you can find a through line, something that makes sense. So going back through our notes, we know the cover. We know this lake draws down a little bit. We know it's super steep now because we did 3D imaging. And we know there's very few pockets. Now let's just stick with these pockets a little bit longer. And let's zoom in here real tight. So these pockets seem a little different now. Yeah. You see, these pockets right here, at least the ones we hit, they're good. They might be good spawning bays, but they're not very big and they're very, very steep, which tells me there's not a lot of area for spawning to happen. Now, with this said, we're going to switch over to here, our navionics, and now we're going to zoom in on this. And we're going to make a few adjustments here. Let's go to satellite imagery, kind of overlay what we were just talking about. I like to firstly start with this. Now, if you look at these two creeks here comparatively, polish up the screen a little bit there. Boop, and perfect, and boom. Let's try that one. There we go. And then you can switch to sonar chart if you guys want to do that too, if you're following along at home. And perfect, 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 and perfect. Cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to swing back over to here. And now we got both these creeks set up. Perfect. So you can tell based on the chart to Google Earth, there's a huge difference in what is actually popping out on the screen. If you look at this, this would tell me it's really shallow here. Yeah, no kidding, right? And you can adjust the depth and stuff like that on avionics. That's no big deal at all. But it would tell you just by looking at this, that's a shallow back pocket. Well, now when you go to Google Earth and you look at this, you can tell like, yeah, it might be a little shallow over there, but there's not a lot of area. This is crucial. And this is, I cannot stress this enough. If you're trying to find a spawning pocket, depending, okay, how many bass can actually use that same spawning pocket? If this pocket like this only has 3 feet of good water, let's use this one right here as an example. If this one here only has about 10 feet of good spawning habitat, there's not going to be a whole lot of bass on there. So if you're fishing like a 4-day event, you might not be able to count on that one spot to last you all 4 days. And that's where using both of these kind of help you out. If you just use the regular topo map or an avionics, you would think based on looking at this, like, oh, there's plenty of room back here. This is like the primary juice. But now with using this, look at how steep that bank is. Probably not as much area, surface area for a bunch of fish to get up on the beds. Maybe it's good for 1 or 2. So now what we're going to do is we're going to scroll out. We're going to hit the 2D, and now we're going to start looking around the lake again. I want to find a couple more places that look like the juice. And all I'm doing is I'm going to blow out here. And because Lake Moomaw doesn't have a lot of fingers, I'm just going to kind of look around real quick and see what we got. And because the main boat ramp is here, we're going to go up lake, because if you guys remember your homework, the upper part of the lake usually warms up. So what we're going to do, now we got some stumps up here. Yep. So this is super shallow up here. And again, if you just use the avionics, you wouldn't have necessarily seen all this juice. You would have known it's steep. You would know the Jackson River's there, but you wouldn't have seen all of this debris, all this stuff. So now this is starting to tell me that, okay, maybe the upper end of the lake is going to be a good place to actually start. However, is this going to be protected from flooding, things of that ilk, from heavy rains, from current? Because fish in a river run reservoir like this, think of it just like the Shenandoah River, the fish are going to want to try to get out of that current to the best of their ability. So I'm going to actually, I would explore up there, but I would actually be looking like at this area right here. This creek here, and we're going to hit it with 2D real quick. Let's just check it out. Oh, look at how steep it is. Boom. Whoa, maybe that won't actually work because it is a little steep. That's not going to actually hold a lot of. But now we come up here, all of a sudden we can tell that this bank here is a little bit flatter. The topography doesn't break as deep. So honestly, up here might be one of the better spawning coves. So again, guys, this is just kind of how you can use it to break it down. So if I was going to be fishing a tournament here first, what I would do is I would go down here. I would fish these 3 creek arms first to kind of build my pattern out to see how many fish are actually there. I know it's a little bit smaller. I know in my mental notes that there's not going to be a whole lot of spawning habitat right down here. But then again, what am I also going for? That's kind of ties everything in neatly, right? If it's largemouth, there's not a lot of spawning habitat in these 3 creeks. Smallmouth, on the other hand, they spawn a lot deeper. Well, there are smallmouth in this lake. So cool. Now I'm building out that resume a little bit more. Is there another lake that you guys would like me to use before I switch to the next conversation? Let's see if I can invite him in here. Yeah, Travis, absolutely. It is very steep. I've always tried to figure out where in the world they spawn on this lake. Yeah, and that's the thing too. So for the largemouth, they're going to spawn a little bit deeper, and again, that's just based on the research that we're doing right now. They're going to spawn a little bit deeper, and it's going to, I believe personally, a spawning tournament is going to be pretty crowded. Now, again, start on a couple of coves, start there, and then go work your way back out. South Hudson, we can do that next. Okay, sweet. Guys, let me know in the comment section below, where would you want to start fishing on this place? Let me get him set up here. We have our caller trying to call in. The other place that you can start on here is right here, too. See, it's just not as steep back here. So this actually right here might be the winning pocket. Yeah, this is it. So if I was going to start, so in 20 minutes, I just found the best spawning cove, or one of the best spawning coves on Lake Moomaw is right back in here, using both these things. It's not as steep. It's in the very back. You can tell that there's a bunch of secondary points leading to the back of this thing. And I compare it with this. It's not as deep. There is one dock here, which is important. It does add an extra staging area for them, which is highly, highly important. And it also has shallow water available to them, relatively speaking, to the rest of the lake. Sweet. So let's go to lake number 2. Lake Anna. You know what? Let's do Lake Anna. Let's do Lake Anna, and then we're gonna switch to the next thing. Find Richmond right from there, and then go up. Perfection. Alrighty. So now what we're going to do is we are going to do a breakdown on Lake Anna. And it looks like our guest can't come on the show, which is no big deal. All right, that's no big deal. So that's a good pivot from what we were actually going to talk about. All right, let's get up to Lake Anna here. All right, so next thing we're going to talk about is a Lake Anna breakdown, and then we're going to get into kind of springtime baits, depending on where you are. So what you're going to do here. Now, Lake Anna, the reason I want to use Lake Anna is a fantastic. Everyone fishes Lake Anna. It gets... He's trying to come on the show, isn't he? Copy clipboard. Perfect. Sweet. Sorry about that, guys. So I want to show you how you can figure out a dock pattern. So what we're going to do next, guys, and then we're going to switch into the next segment of the show. We're going to talk about how you can actually formulate a dock pattern without actually being on that lake. There's a lot of flooded timber back there. If I remember correctly, it's been a few months since I've been. Crystal clear water, cleanest body of water. Yeah, I hear Lake Moomaw is one of the cleanest bodies of water in the state. Some fantastic trout fishing below the dam. Also, if I'm not mistaken, you can catch like 30-pound sacks out of there easily. We had a We had a guest on the show earlier this year that talked about it. Head of Woods and Water. I think you know him. Talking about how great the fishing is on Lake Moomaw. It's fantastic, Travis. All right, so let's get back into it right here. How you can formulate a dock pattern, and I think Lake Anna is a fantastic example of this. So when you're fishing a lake, especially Smith Mountain Lake, Lake Norman, Lake Anna, places like that where you have a heavy dock presence, there are tons of docks. Lake Hartwell in the Classic next week, same thing. It can be very daunting. And generally, what you'll end up trying to do if you haven't been there before is you're going to just show up, drive to the nearest dock, and you're going to start beating the bank, and you're going to spend 6 hours doing that. There's a little bit better way to isolate. There's a little bit better to isolate the specific docks that you should actually start on, and you can use Google Earth to do that. So generally speaking, when you're fishing docks, and this is general information, okay, without you knowing anything about the lake before you get there, such as like there's brush under certain docks, things like that you actually do need your boat for. You're going to want to look for docks that are a little different. Either they're older or they stand out somehow. So generally speaking, the docks that you're going to look for when you're hitting them is going to be the first dock in the set, a dock that is completely alone, and the dock that's in the very back. Those are your 3 places that you can actually start it. Now, this is how I use Google Earth if I'm fishing a dock pattern. We did this a lot in college when we fished Lake Chautauqua up north. I have this information. I'm going to make screenshots. I'm going to download waypoints. I'm going to take that to my computer. And I'm going to take it off my computer. I'm going to put it onto my GPS unit, your Garmin, Lowrance, Humminbird, whatever you have. You're going to go to the lake and you're going to start fishing. This is something I want you guys to take note of this year when you go out there on the lake. What dock did you start catching them off of? Okay. If you're going along and you're fishing, let's say it's April in Lake Anna, and you start in the back and you work your way out, and you start finding out that you're catching them on the second dock midway through. Classic example is this dock right here. If I'm catching it on this dock right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up on my phone because I have Google Earth. And I'm going to look around the lake and find that second dock that is halfway in. So then if we look at right here, compare this one right here. So I just caught it right here. This is the first main dock that's available to me before I get into the back of this spawning cove. This is the first main dock. Boom, I catch one on here. I catch nothing in the back. I catch nothing on the points. So they're in this transitional phase between the pre-spawn and spawn. I'm going to use my Google Earth and I'm going to look around for that same type of thing. Look right here. This is the first main dock on this side, and there's a laydown right here. That's important. Make a note of that. I catch another one off here. I catch a 6-pounder right here. Okay, are they on trees? Don't know. Well, I'm going to whip out my Google Earth on the water, and I'm going to look around for more laydowns. Okay, let's say there's a laydown right here on this point. I don't catch anything. Let me try a couple more. Don't catch anything. Interesting. Why then was there a fish on this laydown here? Well, now we can formulate, maybe it's because there's a laydown next to a dock. So now, and again, I'm doing this all with Google Earth, and I'm not driving, burning hundreds of dollars of gas, just looking around the lake aimlessly. I catch a few, I'll sit down in the boat and practice, and I'm going to study right then and there. That is the better use of your time, in my opinion, than just driving around the lake aimlessly. Get some clues. Once you get a few clues, get back on Google Earth, get back on your mapping software, and start looking around. And then you can start piecing together the puzzle. So now that we have it in this scenario that it's a dock next to a tree, so it's the first dock into the cove that's been working, I can go around and find all the first docks on this lake that enter a cove. And what I can also do is highlight all the first docks that have a tree right next to them, circle that, and try to run that. If by chance that actually works again, boom, I now just established a pattern. I broke down mentally what I'm going to do to this place, a generic idea, before I ever hit the water. And then when I get to the water, I'm using my notes to help formulate and refine my plan. So guys, I really hope that helped out on the show. So again, get your Google Earth, get your Navionics on your desktop, no matter what you're running. Before you get to the lake, put that up on your screen and then get a notepad out. Figure out what is the primary cover you're seeing. Figure out if there's a lot of depth fluctuation, type of rocks. Switch from 2D mode to 3D mode like this, so you can see the difference in topography, which if you guys have been here for the whole live stream, isn't it interesting that like when we were on Lake Moomaw, that sucker was absolutely super duper steep, almost like a ski slope when we put it in 3D mode. Lake Anna, flat as can be. That's interesting. Now, if the whole lake is flat, and this is the flip side here, steeper banks are going to be the juice. On Lake Moomaw, everything was steep. So flatter banks, it's a change. It's that break. Just like deer follow like a break in the earth, in the backdrop to use as their paths to move to and from where they sleep and eat. Fish will do the same thing. So by flipping to that 2D and 3D and playing with that, it'll make that pop a little bit more than a standard map just won't do. From there, you can go on the water. And as you start catching fish, I challenge you this year, as you start catching fish, stop. Look at your notes, either up here or on a piece of paper, and ask yourself, why did I catch that fish? Put this up right here. You know, one thing that made my brother and I so super effective when we were fishing college tournaments, because they would throw you on, back when we did it, they'd throw you on just random lakes. It wasn't just, same old Potomac River. It was that when we caught one, we would sit down and we would challenge each other to investigate, why did this bite happen? And we'd go back to the maps, and it helps narrow down a game plan. So I try to do that this year. I think it'll really help a lot. Oh, we got a question right here. Travis, question. Another topic. I would love to see how you break down offshore fishing. I find myself being John Cox every time I fish a lake, and I just go shallow. Travis, that's not a bad thing at all. Travis, give me your DM me or message me your information. You're going to get a gift card to Jake's Bait and Tackle. You've been asking a lot of good questions this morning. You were here at our last live stream. Shoot me, or if you know Jared, just let Jared know that I sent you. But yeah, you're going to get something. Thank you so much. And the other guys, please share this live stream too. If you guys can share this, bring awareness to the channel. The more we grow, the more we can highlight different fishing opportunities in the DMV area. Fishing the DMV is presented by Jake's Bait and Tackle in Winchester, Virginia, one of the best tackle shops around. If you have a question, go to them. They'll be able to help you out. Fishing the DMV covers everything, not just bass fishing in Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Delaware. The whole, if it's around DC, we're going to cover it. We're one of the most transient populations on God's earth. I know, like, my brother has to travel 2 hours one way to get to work. We're just used to commuting a lot. So we cover a huge area. We're going to have catfish guides on the podcast. We're going to have crappie anglers on the podcast. We're going to talk about the shad run, the perch run, everything. Whether it's on the bank, a kayak, or a boat, Fishing the DMV is going to try to cover it. For the people that ask the best questions, we will be doing some giveaways as well. So feel free to ask some questions, and I'll see if I can get an answer to you. But yeah, Travis, what we're going to do is, as we get closer to like the summertime as well, talking about summertime offshore fishing, I'll give my 2 cents on offshore fishing as well. And because I know I'm not a pro, so we'll try to get some people on the show that are a little bit better than me to talk about it as well. But great question. And now let's segue to the next part of our show here. Sweet. Alrighty. So we're going to be talking about. So we're going to try to get Jared on the show. He is one of the owners and operators of Jake's Bait and Tackle. When he gets on the show, we're going to be talking about the Florida tournament that just happened for the Bassmasters. But right now, what we're going to do is we're going to be talking about springtime techniques. And I want you guys to let me know in the comment section down below, what is your favorite springtime technique? Gun to your head, from now until April, you had to pick 3 presentations. 3. What would you do? Type them up in the comment section below. The best one's going to win a prize. And I'm going to get a couple of baits to kind of show you guys like my breakdown of lakes, rivers, ponds, and overall. So again, lakes, rivers, ponds, and then overall top baits for March, this time of year. I'm going to grab them real quick. And I'm back. Sorry about that, guys. I have like a billion baits down here by my feet. So what we're going to start with on what baits to use right now. And we got some things coming in now. Yeah, I like it. So what we're going to start with, guys, is pond fishing in the area in March. And then we're going to go to the river systems. We'll go non-tidal first, and then we'll kind of go to the lakes. Just kind of like a couple of baits that I think if you try them, you should have some success. So we're going to start with ponds first. If you're fishing a pond or you're beating, or even if you're beating the bank, if you're fishing a pond, the one thing you got to think about is you have limited access to move. Whether you're fishing Franklin Park in Purcellville, Virginia, Burke Lake, Lake Frederick, places like that, generally speaking, you don't have the ability to just run spots. And what that means is you have to milk the areas. So some of these baits, you would think they're probably a little bit more finessey that are on my list. But again, the reason is you have to milk the area that you have for all it's worth when you're fishing from the bank. So we're going to start with more of like big fish bait. As the ice starts to melt away and the sun starts to warm up, ponds are the first thing this time of year that are going to warm up. And so you can have some of the best days ever in a lot of ponds once you start hitting like a couple of 50-degree days, 60-degree days. So the first bait that if you want to catch a big one is the river to sea glide bait. This one right here is my favorite size. They do come a little bit smaller, but the 168S is by far the best all around size. Trout color, this is all you need. Ponds generally in Northern Virginia, you do have one or two fish that are about 8 pounds. And usually there's two extremes with them. They're either super educated or they're dumb as a rock. It's one of the two. And so with a glide bait, you're able to get both of them. Super educated bass don't see a lot of swim baits, especially in ponds. They just don't. And really dumb ones love to eat these things. There's also a third advantage of me putting this on the list for ponds. A lot of ponds in the area are stocked with trout, especially in the springtime. And people don't clue in that I think that trout is a forage species. But when you think of trout as a forage species, you think, well, California, 20 pounders. No, I've seen a 12-inch bass, and this was actually at Wilkinson Lake in Winchester, Virginia, next to Jim Burnett Park. Try to swallow this thing, had the back hook like this in his mouth. So smaller bass will definitely feed on trout. The other reason I like this size right here is you can fish it on a lot, normal equipment. You don't have to get like a musky rod or anything. Whatever your flipping stick is at home, that'll work fine. And you can just tie this on. You don't have to get super, super specific. If you want to, you can. You can go with braid to a fluorocarbon or monofilament leader, depending on what you want. If you want this bait to sink down the water column a little bit more, I suggest you go with fluorocarbon. If you want it to stay up in the water column a little bit more, go with monofilament. Monofilament naturally wants to rest on the surface. And then go with 18 to 20 pound is all you really need for this size bait, in my opinion. All you're going to do is you're going to work it just slowly, reeling it back to the boat or the bank, sorry. And then every now and then just crank the handle. I've caught tons of them on this. If you want a more in-depth video, I can do that. If not, you guys just go to Tactical Bassin. Like we all watch Tactical Bassin. Matt has probably more experience with swim baits than I do. I can give my 2 cents worth on it, but just a thought. Hey man, how you doing? So let's see what we got here. We got Alan, love it. Square bill, jerk bait, creature bait. Ooh, I like creature bait. Alan, that's a really good idea. I never even thought about that. Dave Smith, crankbait, rattle trap, and Texas rig lizard. Ooh, Texas rig lizard just is not used anymore. Why do you think that is? People really have gone away from using a Texas rig lizard, but it's really good. And rattle trap, we actually talked about that in our last live stream about how lipless baits are, I think, the greatest grass bait ever made for finding them. Oh my goodness, the amount of shit I caught from friends saying like, no, the chatterbait's the best thing ever. The chatterbait's what you're going to catch the most weight with, all this. And it's like, guys, I didn't say the chatterbait wasn't good. I was just giving an alternate opinion is all it is. But crankbait, 100%. Hey, what's happening, bud? Good to see you. So anyway, number 3 on my list, glide bait, smaller one. For ponds, by the way. We're talking about ponds. The next one on my list, tiny jerk bait. This one here is, and I'm not sponsored by any of these companies, guys. I just throw my money down the hole. Hopefully my wife doesn't know about how much I spend. But this is a live stream, so I guess, yeah, she knows. All right, well, I'm screwed either way. Anyway, this one right here is by Eurotackle. This is a trout jerk bait. And this is something that blows my mind. People, at least it seems to me, if you went to a Dick's Sporting Goods or anywhere else and you saw this jerk bait, nobody would buy it for bass fishing. I believe no one would buy it because people are thinking about, pull it up over here, if I can find it. When people think jerk baiting for bass, they think something like a mega bass, something like this. And look at the size difference here. Look at that size difference. Isn't that nuts? So down below, what we got here is, what you got here is the mega bass point +1. And then this is a Eurotackle trout jerk bait. Isn't that insane, the size difference? And most people, if you walk into a store, man, they're going to be like, yeah, 100%, you're going to throw this one. But would you do that for a pond or a small body of water? What are they eating? They might not have shad. And granted, you could catch a bass throwing this in a pond. I'm not saying you could, not with this longer bill. But the point is it doesn't match the hatch specifically. Going to a Eurotackle jerk bait or a Blaze jerk bait right here, this one here, it's got a smaller bill. It's got a more natural profile of a minnow. Something like this is going to maximize your chances of catching a bass in the pond that is feeding on fathead minnows, larvae, things of that ilk. But, and this is the big key, this is huge, is the bill size. Ponds notoriously have a mucky bottom. Most ponds in the area, because they're old farm ponds. And people don't like to throw a hard jerk bait, at least from what I've seen. What you want to do is you're going to pair one of these and you're going to throw it on monofilament to braid or just straight monofilament. Roughly 14 to 16 pound test, depending, because it's going to get it off the bottom. You don't want this to go very deep in most ponds, generally speaking. However, the biggest change is with your motion and how you make it react. Instead of working that rod tip down with a jerk bait like you would if you're on the boat or you're fishing a deeper body of water, you're going to be working it up and to the side. That way you're keeping it from it getting mucked up in the bottom. But I want you to try to go with a smaller size jerk bait if you're fishing a pond. Okay? So that's one of the other ones on my list. So far we got a glide bait for the bigger ones and we got a small jerk bait in the ponds. And we got 2 more baits on this list. Next one is a chatterbait. Yes, a chatterbait. The reason I'm going to go with a chatterbait over a lipless bait for pond fishing, this is important, is this is a multi-tool. On some of my other videos, we've talked about this, that if I want to have a bait that can do multiple things. Because ponds have a muckier bottom, I'm a little bit more hesitant to throw treble hook baits like a square bill. And this depends on the pond, by the way. But generally speaking, if it's got that muddy bottom, if you throw something with a lot of treble hooks that grinds on the bottom, like hopping a lipless bait or cranking a crankbait down there, you're going to get so much gunk on the bait constantly that you're just going to tear your hair out. So if your lake has more of a harder bottom, by all means, switch this out for a crankbait. But for most farm ponds, it's going to have that mucky, silty bottom. A chatterbait gives you the same ability, as always, as a lipless bait. We all know what the chatterbait does, but you can hop this thing, and that's huge. As that water warms up, the fish are going to become more aggressive. But depending on the pond that you're fishing, they could still be in that negative mode. You can take this bait and yo-yo it and hop it just like a jig and still get that reaction strike. I would go with a Z-Man chatterbait. Go with the smaller version in either white or you're going to go with the green pumpkin right there. The last bait for ponds, and this one's going to come up on the list like a lot just because I have confidence in it, is a Ned rig. Okay. You can go with a jig or a drop shot, whatever you're comfortable with. But the number one thing I would try to go with is a super light Ned rig to milk the area. Ponds, you can't, the fish are there. Like you got to deal with what you got. Same thing when you're bank fishing. And so you have to milk the area. So going super finesse is kind of important when you're dealing in these situations, since you can't just move like in a lake. You can't just work a jerk bait pattern on 50 points if you're dealing with a small body of water. So what I want you to try to go with is a small Ned rig. Black and blue, generally speaking, is my favorite color, since what I think you're primarily targeting is larvae that are starting to sprout out. So those are my pond baits. Let's see what we got here. I caught a giant on a 3-inch husky jerk suspended version. Yes, I know. Like the jerk bait, dude, is one of the best baits ever made. It really is. For so many things, and I really like that now you're starting to see more and more pros starting to use it year round. And part of that's Panoptics, but that was something we did all the time, was their jerk baits. But what's funny is, because this is where I think you got to be open minded when you're a pro angler, or a pro angler, whether you're any type of angler in any profession, because you read something and you think like it literally has to be done that way. Example is, when I was growing up, it was kind of like, if you read Bassmasters, you only threw a jerk bait in pre-spawn when it's cold. That's all we ever did, blah, 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 unless you're fishing for smallmouth. And now it's like people are using jerk baits year round. Well, when I was growing up, I pretty much tried to do exactly what Bassmaster magazine said. You only fish it in that pre-spawn time. And you just don't want to get locked into tendencies, if that makes any sense. So guys, what do you think? What is your favorite pond bait this time of year? Those are kind of mine. Alan, let me know if you're still in the chat, bud. Dave, let me know if you're still in the chat. DM me. I'm going to try to get you a gift card to Jake's Bait and Tackle. All right, let me get right set up for river fishing. Now, this is what's going to be fun, is I'm going to piss off a lot of river guys, and we're going to talk about smallmouthy rivers next, okay? Smallmouthy rivers. Okay, here we go. All right, sorry about that. What you guys don't see is below my feet are about 6 billion boxes of baits, because that's how organized I am in the morning when we do this. All right, so what we're going to, oh, I just dropped it. There we go. Sorry, I just dropped a treble hook right on my foot. That was fantastic. So the next thing we're going to talk about is rivers. The Shenandoah, Upper Potomac River, between like Hancock and Harper's Ferry, and then all the way down. Basically any kind of smallmouth body of water. These are kind of my baits to try and throw this time of year. And honestly, with smallmouth, it's pretty much that way all the way. If you're fishing a deeper portion of the river, you're going to throw a Vision +1, any kind of deeper diving bill. The thing, though, I want you to look at doing, though, is getting a smaller downsized version. This is crucial. Think about what they're eating. The water's cold. I think the last time I was on the river is like a week ago. It was like 44 degrees. The water temp is still bone-chillingly cold right now. So what you want to go with, and this is box 1. I have 4 boxes of jerk baits. If you're fishing the deeper part of the river, here is a Mega Bass +1, and it's the shorter version. Okay, and I'll link this in the episode description as well. Jake's Bait and Tackle has a bunch of these. Dick Sporting Good has them as well. This is actually the smaller version of the big dog right here. And look at that size difference. All right. The bait that they're usually hitting is a little bit smaller. Okay. It comes with 2 hooks. The standard ones are fine. I would trade them up for Aaron Martin's finesse treble hooks. We can go down that rabbit hole at a time. I think it was Travis the last. I think it was Travis or Ashley. I think it was Ashley that talked about last time. if you had to pick a color, I'd always go with two. I'd go Sexy Shad, which gives you that little bit more in between clear and stained water. And I'd also go with a pearl white, something like that. Fish, if you want to talk about tackle, we can later on, but we're just doing baits right now. If you guys want me to go in kind of the tackle setup for this, just let me know. But you're going to go with one of these right here. I'll link it in the episode description. It's just a smaller Vision Plus 110. And you can also get it at Jake's Bait and Tackle and Dick's Sporting Goods. So those are the jerk baits that I'd be throwing. As that water starts to warm up, we're going to get into the crankbaits. Number one crankbait that I would go with is the Rapala Ot Slim. If you can find it, you might have to kill someone to get it. Crayfish patterns, of course. 10-pound fluorocarbon. You want to go with that slim-sided or flat-sided crankbait. It doesn't have to be this one necessarily. This is just the newest one on the market that I've been playing with, and it's been actually working pretty well. Other colors are the Old Bombers. This is the Old Bomber crayfish color here. And this will run about 4 to 5 feet deep, depending on the line size that you use. And we can talk about that later if people really want me to in the comment sections. The other crankbait that I would throw, and this is one I've been playing around with too, it's the Eurotech micro crankbait. To give you a size comparison, look at how much smaller that is. Again, why am I going smaller? Pressure, or if I want to match the hatch. Okay, so for the river, I'm throwing a jerk bait. I'm throwing a crankbait. And then I got two more baits for you. The next one here is a Z-Man micro jig. And I pair that up with the TRD, basically D-bomb. Okay, I'll try to hold that right there. You're going to throw this on stupid light tackle. Okay, like absolutely stupid light. I would suggest 10-pound test on a spinning rod, maybe fluorocarbon to a braided leader. You guys really need to learn how to tie leader knots. Let me know if you want me to help you guys with that in the comment section. But this is the Z-Man tiny jig, and it is with basically the TRD version of the D-bomb. It's super small, but this jig right here is fantastic. Again, because you're going to be crawling this along the bottom. The next bait. Next bait for rivers is this right here. This resembles a baby catfish. You can get these at Jake's as well. You can also get them online. These are called Mad Toms. I highly suggest if you are a Shenandoah or Upper Potomac River, Google what a Mad Tom is. It is a tiny catfish that is local to our river systems. It's basically like our version of a goby. You want a bait that kind of mimics this, especially this time of year when the crayfish are not as active. They're feeding more primarily on forage species like the Mad Tom. You can hook this on any type of jig head that you want. I would suggest hooking it a little bit more weedless. The next thing, and the last one for the river, and this is going to be a shocker, is of course we're going back to the Ned rig. Now, this time of year, I don't like to throw it necessarily on my power head. I'll talk about that power head setup if you want me to. Just let me know in the comment section. But you're going to go with a black and blue again. You can go with green pumpkin, but generally, depending on the water clarity, I like going with the black and blue because I think it looks more like larva. You're going to throw that on an 8-pound test fluorocarbon, and you're going to take that to a braid. Okay, there's a couple of knots. If you want me to tie a knot, I can do that as well. That kind of rounds up my baits that I would throw on the river. Now you can throw the chatterbait. Chatterbaits are very lethal for smallmouth, but it just kind of depends on the time of year and the water temperature. Right now the water is still extremely cold, so I think you're kind of limited on the baits that you're going to throw. And again, let me know in the comment section like if I missed something, if there's a bait that you would particularly want to throw. And now let's get into lakes. And these lakes vary from Lake Anna, Smith Mountain Lake. I'm just going to give you kind of broad overview of my top baits for a lake right now. And then we're going to go to the tidal Potomac River. We're going to finish off with the tidal Potomac River. So again, the number one bait for lakes this time of year, minus the A-rig. We're not going to talk about the A-rig here since I know a lot of you guys fish tournaments. You're going to be throwing that jerk bait again. Now, for lakes around here, depending, again, on your water clarity and stuff, you're going to go with two different styles. You're going to be going with like the Vision Plus 1 here. Megabass is one of the best ones ever made. We all know that. But also you can give Strike King a try. I definitely like their regular series jerk baits, especially their AYU. I guess it's AYU color. As you can tell by this one has gotten the snot beaten out of it here. It's going to be the jerk bait. Fish are starting to stage, getting ready to think about the pre-spawn. It's early pre-spawn staging here. So I really think the jerk bait is my primary one to start to try to find and key in on those hot spots. Number 2 on my list is going to be the rock crawler. The rock crawler, I've had tons of success with. I know some people like it, some people don't. If you don't like the rock crawler, that's fine. I want you to go with whatever crankbait you can get in a crayfish color. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking for those rocky points, whether it's Lake Anna, Smith Mountain Lake. If you just want to catch fish, one of the most stupid, simple, easy ways to always pattern fish this time of year is rock, riprap, docks, those type of things like that. You're going to take a rock crawler type of bait. You're going to take a jerk bait. And you're going to go around and you're going to be trying to hit everything that has rock on it. Okay. Number 3. Sorry about that. Number 3 on my list for lakes this time of year. Swim bait. Duh. I'm a swim bait guy. But we're not just going with any old swim bait. We're going to be going with a Keltec. And this one's going to get me in so much trouble. And this one's going to make another appearance. American trash fish. What you're going to do with your swim bait is you're going to start it with no head, just the head. You can go with any head you want. You can go with a Dirty Jigs Matt Allen finesse swim bait head. You can go with a guppy head, depending. And you're just going to slowly bang this thing on the bottom. That's one if the water temperatures are still cold near you. The other thing you can do is slip that swim bait out for a blade. If the fish in your like Lake Anna, where they really target, they're targeting shad, blueback heron, get a screw lock that you can attach a blade, or just start with a bladed jig hook, an underspin basically. And then the last thing that I'm going to do if pre-fishing a tournament is I'm going back to the river to sea. I'm going with the 168 or bigger. If I'm fishing the lake, I might go bigger. And the reason is draw power. I might not catch them, but with this bigger glide bait, I'll be able to see them, especially when you're fishing a lot of docks. People do not use these things correctly when it comes to search tool. Now, if you have Panoptics, that's one thing you can do, but I still really, really enjoy this. All right. And everyone's like, well, Tom, what about dragging baits and stuff? Not this time of year. Not if we're trying to find them. If you want to drag something, I suggest you drag a Ned rig. And people are like, what about a jig? Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to be talking about that because we're going to do big fish presentations too. But the last thing is the tidal rivers, grass. What are my baits? They're pretty easy. There's only a few, and I think you all know them. Number 1, this time of year, you're going to start, you got the chatterbait tied on. Everyone does. You can go with white, red, or blue. I personally think you should go with a hot red or a green pumpkin blue type of mix. You're going to go with a 1/2 ounce to 1/4 ounce, depending on the grass, the thickness of the grass. If it's shallow, you got a lower tide. You're going to go with that lighter bait, 1/4 ounce. People don't throw that a lot because you don't want to bury this thing into the weeds so much that you can't get it out. Number 2 on my list, of course, are my lipless baits. We talked about that in our last live stream. If you guys want me to talk about lipless baits again, please let me know. Dave Smith, great question. Do you fish the Megabass Trick Darter or Vision 95 when you go to the smaller jerk baits? I fish both. I have them both tied on because I do think there's a little bit of difference in the flash and the movement of the bait. So I have both of them tied on. I think it was Travis that asked me last live stream. It's like, well, if you had to pick one color, and it's like, well, I'm addicted to tackle. That's not fair. It's like having 2 dogs and you have to pick one. If you own like multiple dogs, if someone says you got to pick one, I'm not picking one of my animals. I'm not picking just one of my animals. I'm going to pick all of them. Well, I'm going to have a couple of rods ragged up with a couple of them on there. And that's like how you're going to maximize your ability to be successful. So I use both because for some reason, I don't know why. and maybe you guys know, I've seen it where somebody has the trick darter on, and they will outfish somebody with the 95, and then maybe the next day, all of a sudden, the 95 is working. I don't know why. So I would definitely go with both and have them both tied on. That's a really good question. So lipless baits, we all went through that. We know that. The next bait that I want you to try on for this time of year is a Rapala 6-foot diving DT series. And you're going to go with this color. I know this is the bomb color right here, the Model A, but you're going to go with that Delta Red Crawl. And I'll link that in the description below. You're going to be throwing that on 15 to 20 pound test, depending. That type of line gets it elevated in the water column, and it also makes it a lot easier for you to pop it out of the vegetation. But you're going to go with that Delta Crawl. Because, guys, fishing the tidal Potomac is pretty easy this time of year. And I wouldn't even throw a swim jig right now, but we're going to get into that. So yeah, those are basically my tidal baits, and you can throw in there a spinner bait, but it's going to be a chatter bait and a lipless really to try to find them. And then once you find them, you can then make small adjustments to more of a Ned rig or stick worm. But this is the time of year where you should be you should be searching and trying to find more aggressive fish, because we're getting to the point where they're going to be starting to chase. Now what we're going to talk about is if you're after the biggins. And I'm talking, you're trying to catch your PB, your personal best. And I don't care where you're at. I wish I had some scissors. Yeah, Spooky Res. Amen to that. So we've covered ponds. We've covered Shenandoah River smallmouth, Potomac River smallmouth. We've covered the tidal Potomac. We've covered lakes. Now what we're going to cover is just my baits I think you should be throwing this spring if you really want to catch the biggest fish of a lifetime. And it's not as many baits as you think. It's just specific tackle that you need. Number one, if you are on Smith Mountain Lake, or if you're on Lake Anna, the first thing I want you to go with is an osprey. Okay, this is the inline model. This is the 6-inch model right here. This thing can also work on ponds, but we're going to get into a better bait for ponds in particular. I like the 6-inch. It's just small enough that a 2 to 3 pounder will still take a crack at it, but it's big enough to get the drawing power of that bigger one. On Smith Mountain Lake, this is absolutely killer, and you can win a lot of money by throwing these bigger swim baits. I think Skeet Reese also won a tournament in Smith Mountain Lake a long time ago, throwing this bigger osprey style bait. The reason this is not as high up on my list of big fish baits is it has a belly hook. And the problem with a belly hook is not only are you going to gut hook and hurt a lot of those bigger fish, but it's not very weedless. Because of that tail style, it doesn't have that Huddleston style Huddleston style tail, that boot tail. It's going to have a lot more thumping action. And this one's a very hard bait, so it's not going to have as much body roll as the other ones in our list. But this one right here, if you're fishing Smith Mountain Lake, is an absolute killer this time of year. The next one on my list, you're going to be shocked, right? We're back to it. S-Waver. I know. I talk about the S-Waver a lot, but if you want to catch the biggest fish, usually in the body of the water, you're going to go with the S-Waver. You're going to go with the 168S and the trout color. You can go bigger if you're fishing Lake Anna, but I would say this color right here. And don't worry, we have some of the stuff that's on the list. This one is never talked about. If you can actually find this bait, you're going to be in a rare minority. It's the American trash fish. An American trash fish, what they actually use, they use a mold of a minnow. A trash fish is actually the name of it, which is down in Clear Lake. They actually molded this thing off a dead carcass, and the plastic they use, look at how limp it is. This bait is stupid soft. It does not last very long. I think you can go 2 or 3 fish, maybe. If you can get 3 that you'd be lucky because of how soft this bait is. But I don't know if you can tell it when my hand, or if I tap this thing, you see how it shakes and shimmers? All these little fins on there just quiver. You can throw this on a big bite, mustag, monster belly hook if you're around a lot of timber, or you could do what I like to do, and you're going to belly rig it on a big ball head. This is a fantastic winter bait, but I still use this as the spring approaches because of how soft it is and this 4-inch size profile. I'm going to bomb it out there, and I'm just going to crawl it back to the boat. I'm going to crawl it back to shore, going as slow as possible. When I hit something, because of all these little fins here, every time I hit something, it's just going to quiver. And that is going to generate a core reaction that you have never experienced before. It's like it's almost like a jig bite on steroids. When they eat this thing, they completely inhale it. You very rarely get one that side swipes it. They usually swallow it whole. I usually will throw this on this weedless format, like I said, when I'm around grass or I'm paralleling the shore. So if you are fishing a pond and you want to catch the biggest one that swims, you're going to go with this setup right here, and you're just going to slowly crawl it back. Now you might be saying, Tom, why didn't you use that in your top pond? Because the difference is this here, you're going to get swipers, and because of the treble hooks, you're going to hook a lot more. They don't even have to be big enough to really inhale the thing, and you're going to get a lot of side swipe fish that you're going to hook and bring to the boat. This here, if they eat this thing, they're going to swallow it. And so you're going to get a lot of them that will nip the tail and they'll push it. So it's not going to give you the same hookup and land ratio as a big glide bait will, or any size glide bait. But the ones that do swallow this thing are probably going to be a fish of a lifetime. Now, the last thing that I'm going to go with this time of year, if I'm out for an absolute monster PB, I'll use this one here, is a jig. I think I could do a 2-hour seminar on jigs, and maybe we'll do that next time. Let me know in the comment section below if you guys want me to do a just talk about my jig pattern, especially because I am a little crazy when it comes to jigs and how to use them, because I think they're the most versatile bait ever made. But generally speaking, what I think you should go with here, this is a dirty jig swim jig, one of my favorite colors ever made. This is the perch color, brim color. This color here, or number one jig ever made right here, folks. And it's hard to find them. You're going to go with that Arkeen style head. Okay. It's a little bit different than that swim jig head, you see, or a football head or something of that ilk. What you're not going to do, though, is you're not going to pair it with a D-bomb necessarily. You're going to pair it with a creature bait, something that has a little bit more movement in it. And here's why. A jig gives you the ability to do two things at once. It is the biggest Swiss Army knife in your box, and people don't really understand this, I think. You can swim this thing and you can drag it. This is something that the chatterbait just doesn't have going for it. And again, love the chatterbait. But what I can do with this is I can cast it up underneath a dock and I can drag it. But what I can also do is then swim this and slow roll it in between the docks. And so if I'm doing that particularly, I'm going to go with a lizard or a brush hog style bait in the back so I get a little bit more movement out of it. I'm going to go with this bigger green pumpkin mop style jig. This is a lot bigger than I usually throw because of the time of year. And I'm just going to slowly drag this thing. I mean, painfully slow. I'm going to move it a couple of inches and stop. I'm going to move it a couple of inches and I'm going to stop. When they hit a jig, it's going to feel different. Usually the line is either just going to move or it's just not going to be there. And what I want you to do for my younger anglers that are listening, you're not going to set the hook with slack line. You're going to reel down into them and set the hook on tight line. And we can talk about that if you want to. But yeah, a jig would be my primary big fish bait this time of year. They're getting hungry. They're feeding up as much as possible, getting ready for the spawn. They're hungry. But instead of just throwing a big ass football jig or something like that, we're going to throw one that we can also swim back to the boat as well. Because a lot of times it'll also trigger that core reaction strike. So those are my top baits for this time of year. What do you guys think? And then we got about 20 more minutes left on the broadcast, and then we're going to be wrapping it up for the day. Got some other things I got to do. I got some homework that I need to get done. All right. And now we're going to enter just the kind of question answer. Guys, any questions you want me to answer? Anything that I can kind of point you in the right direction on? Let me go back up through here and answer some questions. Alan, Square Bill, Baycraft. Yep, that's really good. Depth. Ready to answer that thing? Yep. I'd love to see how you break down offshore fishing. I find myself being John Cox. Yeah, John Cox, that's not a bad way to go. Like John Cox has won a lot of money. No idea what that means, but thank you for saying whatever that is. Fantastic. Back in the day. Yep. Amen to that. Amen to that, dude. My goodness, we got no questions here. That's pretty crazy today compared to last time. Of course, last time was like 11 o'clock at night on a Wednesday, which shockingly actually had better. So yeah, I mean, I guess let's. Oh yeah, the one thing I wanted to bring up was who actually watched the Bassmasters on the Harris chain. What is the best success you've had for a tournament using Google Earth Pro? Travis, it's a great question. I came second, actually. I think you can see that trophy up there. Oops, sorry. You can see that trophy up there above my head. I guess the best one using Google Earth Pro probably was coming in second in the Indian Lake, I think it was. It's on my YouTube channel, but we came in second in a college tournament using Google Earth Pro, and that's because like we saw that the lake was drawn down a little bit, and we knew exactly where those rock clumps were. The other place that really helped us was when we were fishing the regionals, the Northern Division College Regional Tournament on the Upper Chesapeake, and there was a super low tide, and we were able to go back and see what the banks looked like on that super low tide, and that helped us pinpoint a couple of rock piles up in the Susquehanna that really gave us most of our weight day two. So those are kind of the best finishes where we qualified. We finished in the top 10 at regionals, and we got to go to the national championship for the second time on Lake Kiwi. And we also came in second by like a couple of ounces, fishing like Indian in Ohio. So those are kind of the things that like Google Earth Pro kind of helped us with, but you don't necessarily need it. You can just use regular Google Earth. It's just the ability that you can go back and see a couple of images of the lake from different times. Good question. Great question, dude. Dude, you are on fire with the good questions. And then we got somebody that actually wants to come on the show. That's impressive. But yeah, like no, the elites last year. Did you guys actually? And Cruz actually won the one before that. What was the most interesting thing to me about last week was it showed you again the microcosm of the pressure that is on a Floridian fishery and how that correlates to the Potomac River. That's what is just so cool about Florida fishing and how it translates to fishing the Potomac River. All right, just got text messages. Perfect. But no, I mean Buddy Gross, man, dude, with the freaking win. And again, what were his baits, guys? A lipless bait, a swim bait, chatterbaits were up there. Like, I mean, grass fishing in of itself is not that difficult. The baits are pretty simple, I really think, compared to, let's say, if you're fishing, I don't know, a Lake Anna, Table Rock, where I think there's more, you could do a drop shot or a shaky head. Like, there's more variables in the baits. When you're fishing grass, it's kind of is a handful of baits, and there's different variations you can do within those handful, but that's it. The hardest thing about grass fishing is just finding them. And I think that it's nerve wracking for people because there's so much of it. compared to, let's say, if you go and you fish docks and you can see the 10 docks and you go fish the 10 docks. You really got to be good with that offshore stuff. Let's see what Travis says here. Travis got another question. It was cool watching the bass elites last week. I focused mostly on Scott Martin and Cliff to see how they bed fish and target those big girls. Yeah. Scott Martin is a fantastic bed fisherman. And I think John Cox actually caught an 11 and a half. I think it was day 3. I think it was day 3 that he caught it. The thing that's interesting to me, and just kind of let me know in the comment sections below, the problem with bed fishing, I mean, you can talk about the morality of it, but it doesn't usually hold up for 4 days. If you're fishing a 1 day, and this is, I think, the biggest issue for young anglers that are trying to go pro, a 1 day tournament is just so much different than a 4-day event. If you're fishing a 1 day event on Lake Anna, example, yeah, you need to learn how to bed fish. You need to get good at it, because if it's that time of year, you're going to get your butt kicked by the people that can. But if you're fishing a 4-day event on Lake Anna, I don't think a spawn bite actually holds up. And that's a difference in how you need to go about it. And so if you watch pros and they're fishing a lake this time of year, understand, like, they're fishing a 4-day event. So their patterns and strategies might not translate, because that's the thing is too, sometimes a 4-day event strategy doesn't translate as well as a 1-day event strategy. The idea of, like, if I catch, 12 to 15 pounds, in a 4-day event, I might win the event. But 12 to 15 pounds in a 1-day event, I'm not going to cash a check. And so that's definitely something important when you're watching these pros, to be able to pick apart that information. Florida stream bass are crazy to me. To see how smart they are to rubber baits. I know a man who guides down there and only uses shiners because that's all he can catch them on. They're just picky. I've been blessed to fish Florida a couple of times. I think Lake Frederick actually has Florida strain in them as well. And the James, if I'm not mistaken, or they might be F1s. But the cool thing about the Florida strain, I think, is is how temperamental they are. You get with northern ones and they'll bite in all the conditions. Florida fish, you got to get them to react. It's a reaction by 100%, not because they are so neutral to negative all the time. If you go Florida bass fishing, generally speaking, assume that they're not going to want to bite, because that's just how it is. It's like, it has to be perfect for them to want to be super predatorial. So with that in mind, let me rethink this. The hardest thing with Florida strain, I think, is your mind plays tricks on you into their mood. And let me explain. If you 6 weeks ago in December went out to a pond, it's -6 degrees out, you mentally are cold and you're miserable and you're like, I need to fish a certain way based on the conditions. You go to Florida and it's 65 degrees. It's warm. You're in shorts. Let's say you're from Canada, dude. That's like summertime temperatures. You mentally are telling yourself, this weather's amazing. And you start fishing the way you're feeling. You start fishing the way you feel. And so you thinking it's 60 degrees, it's fantastic. I'm going to start burning a lipless. But to that bass, it's not summertime to him. It's freaking cold. It's temperamental. If you approach Florida fish like it's -6 in December, you're going to have a lot more success, because you're going to slow down, you're going to pick the area out, and you're going to work the bait more effectively. But the problem is, you go down there again, it's like you're thinking it should be like summertime. And so you want to work the bait quicker, but you got to just think that's not what they're used to. That's not what they're used to. Great question, bud. Let's see. Got another question here on Facebook. What is the biggest bass you've caught in Florida? My biggest bass that I've caught in Florida was 6 pounds on a lipless bait. It was Okeechobee. It was a year. I think it was the year before the pandemic actually happened. We were down there. It was the coldest time of year. It was like stupid cold. We had to wear layers. That's how cold it was. There was frost, and we were on Okeechobee. And I think my brother, no, I got it wrong. We weren't on Okeechobee. We were on Lake Okozaka, I think is what it is. Okazika. It's like above it. And we found a deep hole in a canal, and there was bait in there. And we were throwing blade baits and lipless baits, and we were just yo-yoing them. And dude, it was just, I pulled up on it and it was heavy. And I brought it to the boat thinking I caught a log, and it's just tank. I mean, just this football of a bass. And it's not the biggest bass I ever caught, but that really stuck out to me, that, we're blade bait fishing and lipless bait fishing and just yo-yoing it like you would up here in 30-degree water. And that's how we actually got them to bite. So that was a lot of fun. Let's see, got any more questions here? Dave Smith, what is your favorite way to catch them this time of year? Hmm. But yeah, like I mean, the biggest thing to me was like the pressure too. Like if you watch them fish the Harris chain, places like that, there's not a lot of secrets, I guess. And I think that's what's impressive. I think Iconelli was I think it was Friday, that tournament. It was really cool to watch Iconelli where he said like, yeah, I'm just doing something a little different in a community. And you hear, oh, it's a community hole, it's a community hole. Like I think a community hole gives it like a negative connotation. I really do, because it's like that's just where they are. Whether people know about it or not does not take away from the ability of it to produce fish. So if there's one grass bed in a whole lake, just one. I'm sorry. Let's do this better because everyone can relate to this. Let's say there's only two docks. There's two docks on a whole lake, and they're like right next to each other. Could be considered a community hole. It's super easy. But if you say community hole, all of a sudden it takes on a negative connotation to me. But that is still the best habitat on the body of water for those fish. And so I do look at community holes, quote unquote, because generally speaking, a community hole is just basically the best habitat on the lake that people know about. Generally speaking, you see that with like sandbox on Okeechobee, massive grass flat up north, always produces fish. Why? It's just the best cover. Oh, it's a community hole. Well, no, it's just also it's the best habitat on the freaking lake. Like, I'm sorry, Mattawoman. Well, that's a community hole. Yeah, but it's also one of the best creeks on the whole estuary. It has the best cover, the best forage, the best depth. So I don't know if community hole is a good thing to say or a bad thing to say. I don't know. I just feel like people get so bent out of shape when you say, look, this is a community hole. It's not a community hole, or no, I don't want to fish around crowds. It's like if the fish are there, who cares? That's a you problem because you're mentally just weak. Don't be so mentally weak. Yeah, there are people around you. Tough shit. Like, and that to me blows my mind. It's just a rant because no one generally speaking, I think people don't start fishing in a boat. We start fishing from land. We start fishing from a bank, right? Like how many of us, like when we were 3, just started in a bass boat? We all started on the shore. I remember because like I shot a video like a week ago, and there's 6, 7 people around me because it's a freaking pond. You know what I didn't do? I didn't bitch like, there's too many people here. What about space and representation? Blah, blah, blah. No, it's a pond. There's so much space. We're doing the best we can. But you put people on a $10,000, $100,000 bass boat and you put them in the back of Mattawoman Creek, and all of a sudden people start bitching and complaining about, respect and give me space. And what are you doing? It's so crazy because if we had that same humility that we have when we're fishing a pond and we are shoulder to shoulder, because like, hey, it's a pond. What are you going to do? Guess what? Life would be better, and I think you would fish better. When I go to a pond and there's a bunch of people around me, I don't complain at them for how dare you being at this pond. Don't you know who I am? I say, okay, what are they doing? And what do I do differently? How do I make them react? There are fish here. I can't go to another pond. This is the pond I'm fishing. So I got to catch the fish that are here. If you're fishing Mattawoman or any place that has pressure, instead of complaining, there's too many anglers here. It's a community spot. He's too close to me. You wouldn't do that necessarily when you're fishing a pond, right? Or a small creek. Change your mindset and be like, this is public water. As long as his boat's not bumping against mine, what is everybody doing? How do I outfish them? How do I beat them? How do I understand that we're all competing for a fish down here? What do I got to do better? Instead of bitching at them, what can I do? If you do that, it changes your mindset. It changes your approach. It calms you down. It gets you to fish better. And I'm telling you, it'll make you a much better angler this year. Sorry for that rant. So many times you hear old anglers and people like that, and not just old anglers, but complain about pressure and traffic and all this other stuff. It's like we all started fishing ponds at one time or another, dude. Like, did you complain if 1 or 2 other guys showed up to a small pond? Oh, we can't catch them now because they're not giving me my space and respect. It's like, come on, get out of here with that. Travis, have you ever went fishing for northern smallmouth during the spring? If so, what did you catch them on? Spring is relative. So spring as in their spring. So up in Maine, I don't think it gets to be spring there until July. Does Canada even have a spring? I don't know. But when you're fishing up there for smallmouth, I did get there very, 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 very late. I think it was like 8 years ago. I went to Lake Champlain with my brother, and we were like late spring. And so they were coming off the beds. But generally speaking, what's fun about smallmouth fishing, whatever you do to catch them on down here kind of translates up there with some exceptions. But in the spring, they're going to be on the beds. They're going to be making beds. That is the most stupid fishing you could ever do. It's just stupid. They'll hit a shoe up there on like Lake Champlain, places like that, especially when they're guarding beds. So you're going to throw just like a baby D bomb. A Ned rig works fantastic. Your different types of Ned rigs that you want to throw, jerk baits, of course. I would pare down to a smaller jig right here, something like that. If they're going to be on the beds, use a jerk bait to cover water to locate them. If you don't have Panoptics, once you locate them, you can start milking the thing with a Ned rig. I mean, fishing can be as complicated or as easy as you want to make it. And that's the problem, I think. When do you choose to go down that rabbit hole? I think you have two different extremes types of anglers. You have the John Cox version on one end of the spectrum. I'm going to fish 3 rods, no transducer, an aluminum boat. And I'm going to do this everywhere I go. The other end of the spectrum would be Aaron Martin, who every time he caught a fish would get in the bottom of the boat and write down everything about that colored worm and how many like strands are in the skirt. Both are very, very effective and will catch you fish and win you money. But one will always work better given that day. And that's the thing that you got to figure out is today the day that I have to go down the rabbit hole a little bit more, or is today the day that I keep it super simple? And so many times people want to live at one end at the other and never venture to the other side. A truly great angler has the ability to bounce in between. And it's really hard. And that's why there's not a lot of them that can bounce between the two extremes of I'm going to go down the rabbit hole and count the strands on my jig because that's what I have to do today to actually be successful. And the other ones that just YOLO it and they just go out there and just fish one bait all the time, no matter what. So, but that's a really good question. All right, guys, I got 10 more minutes here, 10 more minutes, and I got some things I got to get done. Any questions I can help you with? What up, bud? Hopefully you heard from your middle school tryout. So again, guys, this live stream is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia. If you have any kind of tackle needs or anything like that, I really highly suggest you go out to them. All the baits that I found, you can get at Jake's Bait and Tackle or go to Tackle Warehouse. I'm not going to get fired over just saying that. I mean, we live in the real world. We have the computer. You can order it online if you want to, but if you want to pay them, if you want to give your money to Jake's, that would really help them out as well. But yeah, all these baits will be listed in the episode description when it goes back up. Also, please let me know any ideas for people to have on the podcast and videos that you'd like me to do and places to go. Let's see. What up, Luke? I was talking to big amounts about this. Sometimes I look at it like casino. Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying, bud. I being an analytical guy, doing strength and conditioning, stuff like that, proprioception. I believe it's like an algorithm. There's 4 numbers and it's a lock. And you got to hit the numbers. And when you get the numbers as close to that digit as possible, you're going to have the success you are. Golf course pond hopping. Yeah, Luke, I like it. So what you do is you have one person fish while the other guy watches out for cops. Let me know in the episode description, guys. Let me know in the comments below. What is your favorite place to fish in Northern Virginia right now? That's public. It's got to be public property, bro. Okay, it can't be a place where it can't be a place where you're going to go get shot by the cops. It's got to be public water. But let me know in the comment section, what is a place that you like to fish right now that's public water. Sleeter's Lake in Purcellville, Virginia is a fantastic place. There is some bank opportunity, but most of the time you're going to need a kayak to get in there. Franklin Park in Purcellville is a great place. There are some really good places in Maryland as well that you can go to. One of my favorite places is Winchester, Wilkinson Lake. I mean, that place is absolutely fire. Lake Frederick. Lake Frederick. Thank you. Hey, there we go, bud. Yep, Lake Frederick. Lake Frederick is a weird place, dude. It really is. Like, it can be really good and it can be really bad. But there are some big ones still in there. And I think based on the research that I've done, there's blueback herring in there, and that really affects the bass and what they do. Sorry about that. Just got to text my wife real quick. Perfection. Sweet. All right. Lake Sleeter has massive bass. Got a buddy who's the only man that can use a boat on it. Yeah, I used to have access through Mrs. Barker, who used to own the boat ramp there, and that's where I cut my teeth learning pretty much everything about fishing. And that was before the houses came in. That place was really good. You know, the other thing, guys, if you really want to catch a fish, like, and I'm saying like any type of fish, just go with a tiny swim bait. Like that's all you need. Like a super, like right here. Pull that up real quick. Like here is a Eurotackle. This is a 1-inch swim bait made by Eurotackle. This is 1 inch. This thing will catch anything that swims. Gulp. 1 inch on a trout magnet. Super light line. It'll catch anything that swims. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be bass fishing that you're going for. You know, going with something like that. Oh, and if you're going to use the Gulp, make sure you put a little super glue on the hook, because that thing will pull off. It wants to pull off. But yeah, just put a little bit of dab on there, and that'll help it at all. Alrighty. So kind of like, we're going to be ending here pretty shortly, guys. We got 5 minutes. Questions, comments, concerns, any lakes that you want me to look at real quick? Any bodies of water before we go here? What up, Casey? Good to see you, bud. So if you guys just joined, what we've talked about is how to use Google Earth and Avionics Desktop to really locate good places to fish before you even get there. I went through the breakdown for March, all the baits that I'd be fishing right now, for the top baits to fish in March for ponds, for lakes, for smallmouth rivers, and for tidal rivers, and of course for lakes. We covered all those topics. We talked about the last tournament the pros fished in Florida on the Harris chain. We covered a lot of topics this morning. Let me know, actually, what other topics would you guys like me to cover, if anything? Give me something that you want me to do a video on. We also have some really cool podcast episodes coming up. Sorry about that. We also have some really good podcast episodes coming up. We did an interview with Fishhawk. Fishhawk is a YouTuber in the area. He's a fantastic guy, really awesome to talk to. That's going to be a fantastic conversation that we have. Casey just posted up here. Will this get reposted? Literally just got here. Absolutely. This is going to be reposted. It looks like you are, but if you're on my YouTube channel, it'll be, the live stream will be reposted, so you can watch it. You can scroll back through and get all the information that you want, so you don't have to worry about that. Casey, I know that you're late to it. So before I get off here, is there anything that you want to particularly, any questions I can help you with, anything like that, any places that you want to fish? The other thing, guys, please try to get your friends to subscribe to the channel. I really want to hit 600 subs on the channel before April. Okay. Last time I checked, We were at 571. I really want to get that last 30 to try to get to 600. That would really help the algorithm to push it. The more people we can get to come into the more people I can get to come into this thing, the easier it'll be to grow, and we can actually get more cool guests on, and we can start doing more giveaways and build this community out. Like I said, I don't want this just to be about bass fishing. I want this to be about all types of fishing. All right, let's take a look. See here, we got a couple more questions, and then I'm going to be coming off. I got three. I'm going to answer three more questions, guys, and then we're going to be pulling this out for the day. We'll be done. Appreciate all the info. Looking forward to the next post. Absolutely, Travis. Yeah, and guys, let me know what type of videos that you want. I know I did a poll on my channel. I know you guys want to do some fishing adventures. We got more fishing adventures coming. We're going to do kayak ones. We're going to do kayak ones. We're going to do boat ones. We're going to do bank fishing ones. We're going to do all of them. Copy that. All righty. And we're probably gonna have Jared on. I'm gonna give Jared one. Jared just texted me. Jared Mounts at Jake's Bait and Tackle that he wants to actually come on the show. So I'm gonna see if I can get him on here. Oh, we got a question. Here we go. Any decent spots for crappie and bluegill fishing in Northern Virginia? Absolutely, there are some really good spots. Come into mind, Red Rocks is really good in Leesburg, Virginia. You have Franklin Park is kind of hit or miss. Best one for bluegill. Let me think of a really, really, really good one. Crappie would definitely be Burke Lake or Lake Brittle. That's going to be your best spot when it comes to bank fishing opportunities for crappie in really northern Virginia. If you have a kayak or the ability to get offshore a little bit, what I would suggest doing. What I would suggest doing is going to Woodbridge. If you go to Woodbridge, there's a major highway that goes across that part of the tidal Potomac. If you can get and start fishing those bridge pilings, the crappie absolutely load up on there. And you can also, okay, awesome. You do have a kayak. Sweet. Okay, Casey. Yeah, that's huge. If you have a kayak, that does open up kind of your opportunities. And you know what? Let me just show you guys a couple of places real quick on the old map. Before we kind of end this thing here. All right, so this is Woodbridge. This is 95 right here. If you're just going for crappie, everything right through this area is fantastic. This is like the dam for Occoquan Reservoir right here, if you can see it. So this bridge right here, this pylon's right through here, and over here. Main part of I-95 here, and all these docks are absolutely fantastic. But I would suggest just hitting all the bridge pylons. I would suggest throwing a trout magnet with a gulp minnow or a small swim bait, and you will absolutely wreck the crappie population. But that area right there is probably the number one crappie destination that I know you will catch crappie. The problem with Sleeters and Goose, or Sleeters and Beaver Dam, is they're not open yet. So I would also suggest Lake Frederick. Lake Frederick is also a really good place to catch them. Now, if you want a bank place to catch them, I'm going to get yelled at by everybody because we're going to do a hidden gem special here. Let's go to Percival. There it is. Whoops. All right, so this is in Percival, Virginia. I've always called this the Orchard, but it's right off of Route 7 next to Stone Lee. This area right here. This pond right here is fantastic in April for bluegill. I suggest you can bank fish this place. Again, 1 inch gulp is fantastic. So give that a try. Any other questions? I think that's all the questions. Let me take a look. See, we're getting right here at the 2-hour mark. I like to try to keep these live streams under 2 hours. I don't see any more questions in the chat. I think we got all caught up with all of them. All right, looks like we're all caught up on everything. Fantastic. So again, my top pond baits, this was the last question. I guess we'll just end it on this. So my top pond baits to be throwing this time of year. So my top pond baits to be throwing this for March, this time of year. So number 3 on my list is a small jerk bait. This is made by Eurotech. You can go with any jerk bait in particular, but you want a smaller version. The Eurotech one is made for trout. It's about 1.5 inches long. It's the perfect size for ponds where you're not going to get it completely stuck in the mud, but you're going to be able to still work it effectively. Go with your regular tackle you would on a jerk bait. Just make sure you don't jerk the rod tip down, jerk it up. You can go with this one right here, or you can go with the Blaze style jerk bait. Okay, that's number 3 on my list for baits to throw at ponds this time of year. Number 2 on my list is the Ned rig or this Bitsy jig. This is the TRD jig, and I'm pairing that with the TRD brush hog, or basically baby D-bomb. I'm going to throw this on 10-pound test line. I can swim this thing, or I can drag it on the bottom. It's light enough that it's not going to get caught in the silt or the mud. So that's a really good bait. And the number 1 thing on my list to throw this time of year in ponds is a swim bait. I like to throw a 2.8-inch Kitech, the sexy shad color, with a guppy style head. I can grind this on the bottom. I can pop it. If I'm dealing with fish that are even more finicky, I will go with, pull this up right here. What do I do with it? The Eurotech 1-inch swim bait. So I'm either going to go with a 2.8 or 1.8-inch swim bait on a small head. Hope that helps with that question. And I think that's everything. All right, sweet. So again, guys, just letting you know, please help spread the word about this channel. We're going to try to do live streams. We're going to try to do more live streams consistently. Next week, we got some special stuff going on with the Bassmaster Classic. Also, new podcast episode launches on Tuesday, along with new regular fishing content every Thursday. My name is Thomas Aarons of Fishing the DMV, and I will see you guys next time.